We've gone too long. Thank you all for coming. This is the last lecture in the series of Pier 24 photography lectures. It's great that you all came. It's fantastic to have Sophie here. We couldn't do it without a bunch of people. I can't name them all, but certainly Steve Beal from the school has been fantastic in supporting us, as has Chrissy Bradley, who's amazing. Tough workhorse. And then Pier 24 and Bob and Randy Fisher have been, wonderfully generous in making this happen. I really appreciate it. I think the whole community appreciates what you all have done. And then always Larry Sultan, who guides us in many ways. And without his inspiration, we probably wouldn't be here today. I was kind of afraid to meet Sophie for a variety of reasons. One, we were competing for a similar award, and I was a little scared that she would beat me. And she would have. Two, she's a rock star, and rock stars are always bigger than one can always handle sometimes, or at least you think that. And in reality, she is Sophie Calle. She's delightful and fierce and very vulnerable and probing and quite funny and very Parisian in the best of ways. I feel my fashion statement goes to hell when I stand next to her. But she's also very, there's a reason why I think we have such a crowd. I think that she is able to mix image and text in ways no one else, in the ways that no one else can. I mean, her work kind of evokes or provokes an emotional response that is almost akin to cinema or literature. And I think that for someone to have accomplished that in their career is just is a wonderful thing to be around. And so I'm honored to get to hang out with her for a couple of days and have our students hang out with her for a couple of days and have you hang out with her now for a couple of hours. So without further anything, here's Sophie. So thanks, Sophie.
Thank you. So, I have decided to go backwards to show my work because I'm getting old and works keeps adding, and I realized when I was doing a lecture at the middle of my work it would be time to go. So I thought that I was going to do like if you knew the work and start by the end. At least I'll feel a little less depressed that I can show what I do now and not only things I did 40 years ago. So the last show I made, also what I wanted to say is that it would be boring for me to talk for 1 or 2 hours without any feedback. So instead of doing question and answer at the end, what I suggest is that we do it during the work, Don't you want to sit here? There is 3 seats. There is 3 spots here. No? 1, 2 left. So the last show I did was about my mother. My mother died 4 years ago, and I filmed her while she was dying. I didn't plan to make a project out of this. I was told that when people die, they use the moment where you go out of the room to give their last breath. And I wanted to be sure to be there, just in case you would have a last word to tell me, to see your last smile, to see what would be the last moment. And I realized that it was impossible for me to be there 24 hours on 24. So I installed a camera on her bedside. We knew she would only have 3 months to live. And the camera became our friend. When I was going out of the room, I think she felt I was in the room through the eyes of the camera. And it helped me move the anxiety, because instead of counting the hours left for her to live, I started to be obsessed with the hours, the minutes left on the video. And in a way, it really helped me, to displace the anxiety. And also, I became the camera, I think, for her and also for me. I was always with her in the room in a way. And I happened to be in the room when she died, and something very strange happened is that I could not figure out when was the last breath. I knew what was the last book she read. I knew what was the last word she said. I knew what was the last person she met. But this, she had asked me when she would die to put a piece of Mozart, and I just didn't know when to put it, because I saw a kind of little, very tiny breath. And then for 11 minutes, there was that moment between life and death where I didn't know if she was alive or if she was dead, because I could not put my finger on the last breath and on death itself. And I was quite surprised by this, to be able to determine all those last moments, but there was that really no man's land between life and death that I could not catch. And I was not planning to make a work out of it. It came from somebody else's imagination, with Robert Storr, who was a curator at the Venice Biennale. And he knew I had been filming my mother, because I told him, and he wanted to show this. And I was not ready at all. I said I was not ready to look at this documentation. And he really harassed me, forced me, and at the end I decided to show it. I showed just those 11 minutes where I don't know what's happening in Venice, and then I decided to work on that project a little more and to develop it. I went, for example, my mother wanted to go to North Pole before dying, and we could not organize that trip. But just after she died, when she died, I inherited of a diamond ring that I hated, because when my grandfather was living in the mountain of Grenoble, when the German arrived in France, he exchanged a building he owned for the diamond ring, because he was afraid his building would be seized. And that diamond was a diamond of fear, really. So I decided to go to the North Pole, and I buried that diamond on an iceberg. So now the diamond is floating. So there was that project. So I added a lot of projects. I made a few works about the last word she said, that was souci, ne vous faites pas de soucis, which means don't worry. And I made a show in the Palais Tokyo basement, which is a completely abandoned building where there was no show since years. They are going to renovate it now to make a museum. But until now, it's completely... So this is the show. And what's funny is that this grave that says Mother brings me to my first image as an artist, because I started as a photographer in Bolinas. I was living in Bolinas in 1977 or 78. And I was traveling, hitchhiking at the time. I arrived in Bolinas that I liked, and I stayed for between 6 months and 1 year, I'm not sure. And already somebody leaving? That was short. Well, that's very humiliating. So anyhow, anybody else wants to go? So I was living in the house of a photographer, and at the time I was using everything I would find, do the job I would do in wherever. And since I was in the house of a photographer, I started to use their cameras and their material. And I went naturally to the graveyard, because of my life, any time I travel in a place, the first place I visit is a graveyard. When I was a baby, my mother pushed me in a stroller in Montparnasse graveyard. Then I was at school, I had to cross Montparnasse graveyard 4 times a day. Graveyard have been natural place for me to go. So when I arrived in Bolinas, I went to the graveyard and I photographed those graves that only said father, mother, brother, sister, twins, husband. And I was really amazed how somebody could be paralyzed like that in one family moment of their life, because obviously a mother is also a daughter, a sister, so why for life or death she was going to become forever. So I photographed this without really knowing what I was photographing, but when I saw the picture, I saw there was something there, and I called my father in Paris, and I said that maybe I knew, I was 26 at the time, that maybe I knew what I wanted to do, that I wanted to try to do photography, and he said that it will help me. So in a way, those two photos in Bolinas of the graves were the beginning, at least the two first images that made me thought I could become an artist. So I use them. So this is one mother, that's the inside, in the belly of the Palais de Tokyo. Ah, okay. So this is the movie of those 11 minutes that are between, I'm not going to show them because it's too long. And this is, there are bad quality pictures, but this is a mixture of my mother dying with the image that I made in the North Pole. When she died, I asked all her friends to come and put an object on her body that she could take with her. So it's only meaningful things that that we put inside the coffin. You know, her shoes, Marcel Proust's book that she was reading over and over, and photos and cookies and a lot of alcohol and cigarettes. She was lively. So this is the groups of graves of Bolinas and Olima and Bay Area pictures that I took in graveyard, saying mother, 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 mother. That's the last word she said, that I have been developing in many different material. Here is on paper, but I've done it on many different materials. In the back, it's images of the North Pole. It's not very good quality, but that's her. That's the diamond ring and the Chanel necklace she would always wear. And that's the stone under which, on the iceberg, I buried it. That's a ring traveling to North Pole. And that's a project. The text is graved on porcelain. So those white elements are the storytelling, the story of the ring. So, anything about that, or should I go on? Yes, that's great.
What was it like to show the 11 minutes in a venue like the Venice Biennale?
It was very strange because as long as I worked on it, wondering which space, what color for the wall, what color for the floor, how to put the screen, it was very easy. It was like if it had been any movie. And actually when I edited those 11 minutes, because I had to find them, I shot her for more than 100 hours, you know, I shot non-stop the camera. So when I had to find those 11 minutes, and I was not really organized, I was shooting, but I was in another state, so I had to find those 11 minutes, and I did it as a work, strangely enough, with a lot of detachment and distance. And as soon as the show was installed, and everything was decided, and they opened the Venice Biennale, I just could not enter the room at all, and never been able to look at that movie. So I can look at that movie when it's in a process of a work. I cannot watch it otherwise. And but it's been extremely helpful because I've never been as much with my mother than since she's dead, because I have that show going on, I speak about her. She would be happy. She liked to be center stage. So, anything about this? Oh.
Lucy?
Yeah?
Was this the first time you were so close to death?
Yes, in the sense that I stayed on her bedside for 3 months, sleeping on the floor and waiting for death. Otherwise, I've been close to death, but not because it happened, but not waiting for it. In this case, what was specific is that I knew we would have 3 months for the most. So it was really waiting for it. And we made quite an event and a party of it. We made every night, there were people drinking. We made 3 months of full party. She left with, and she drew a funeral. She decided everything before. She decided who would talk, what would be the food. Everything. We spoke of death for 3 months, looked for the space, for the spot for her to die. And so, she, on her grave, it says, "I'm getting bored already." That's and she chose a photo. We spoke of it. She decided everything: what she would wear in the coffin, how it would happen. We decide to face it and play with it as much as possible. So, the project I did before that is about a clairvoyant. I had a project that I had planned to do with Paul Auster, the writer, about, he wrote a novel called Leviathan. So since I'm going backwards, it's not easy, but he wrote a novel called Leviathan, in which he used me as a character in the novel. I became Maria for 1 page of the book, and during those 8 pages, it's really me. It's a woman that follows people in the street, is being followed by a detective, keeps her birthday gift, all the things I did. And after, I asked him to reverse the process. I say, since you used me, a real person, and transform me in a fictional character, I want you to do the opposite. I want you to write a fiction, and I would obey completely to the fiction. And I gave him 1 year of my life, saying, whatever the novel asked me to do, I will do it. He thought it was too much responsibility, that if anything happened to me, he would feel responsible for the accident. So he refused, but I really insisted, and finally he gave me a few things to do in the city of New York, like feed people, speak to everybody, occupy a public space and make it mine, as if it was private, and I took a phone booth. We'll go back to this. But I was not satisfied, because I didn't want to receive an idea. I wanted to change life. And he didn't make me change life. He gave me 1 project, but it was still me doing that project and not the character in a novel. So, having failed, I thought about asking to a clairvoyant where she sees me to go in the direction of my future and take my future by speed in a certain way. So this clairvoyant said, okay, I see you in such a place. So I would go there, and after I would say, okay, I'm in between those 2 hotels. Which one should I take? So she would make the card, and she would say, okay, you go right and you take that hotel. So she gave me orders all the time through the vision she had by the cards. I don't believe specifically in clairvoyance, not at all even, but it was a way to play with her, to follow her vision and to see where it would go. So she took me to, she sent me to Berck, a place where there are only sick people with paralyzed. And then she sent me to Lourdes, which is a place for Catholic miracle hopes. So it was quite... so I did... this is part of the work. It's the 67 sickness which have been miraculously cured in Lourdes. And I added the last one that you hardly see because the quality is bad, but it says breast cancer, which is a sickness my mother died of. So I did this when she was still alive, hoping that she would become the last miracle. So it's still linked to my mother in a way through this work. And I went to Lourdes with the game of saving her, knowing it would not be Lourdes that would save her. But That's the clairvoyant. That's a kind of installation of the work. And that's the same work with the clairvoyant when she sent me to Berck. Anything about the clairvoyance? Oh, I should tell, or go on. This is a project I did in the Venice Biennale called Take Care of Yourself. I had received a breakup letter, and I truly didn't know how to answer to that breakup letter. It was very circumvoluted and very hard to understand what it meant at the end. You know, was it a letter inviting me to come back or closing the door? I just could not figure. So I asked 107 women to answer for me. I chose them only on their professional skills. I just wanted them to answer professionally. The philosopher tried to imagine what was in the head of this man, the psychoanalyst on her language, the same, the crossword writer made crosswords with the words of the actress performed the letter, the singer sings the letter, the dancer interpreted dancing, and I found 107. More and more, you know, it was a very sophisticated specialties. One only analyzing the grammatical school woman only looked for mistakes in the spelling. The language specialist on the repetition. Everybody liked, and so I found many different women specialized deeply in a field, and they answer the letter. This is the way I showed it at the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris. The woman on the top, for example, is a champion of the shooting, rifle shooting in France. So she shot from 50 meters 3 times. There is 3 times the word love in the letter, and she shot the 3 love words. There is a little girl of 5 years at school that asks why he says 3 times love if it's to leave me. I mean, everybody answered. My mother answered as a mother, like, don't be afraid, it's no big deal, you know. So everybody answered. So this was at the Bibliothèque Nationale, so all the actresses, singer, dancer were on video, and all the women analyzing text were on works on the... And I had all languages. All the actresses were actresses from all languages: Russian, Chinese, Japanese actresses. Jeanne Moreau did it for the French, and I singer like Peaches Faced did it, made songs with the words of the letter. And so this is the Bibliothèque Nationale. It was, I'm becoming specialized in places that have been closed since 20 years, because Palais de Tokyo was not used for the last 20 years, and the Bibliothèque Nationale either was closed, and I managed to have it open for a month just for that show. So if there is a place in San Francisco which has been closed for the last 20 years, I'm interested. That's a Venetian version, the first way I showed my mother death in a more concentrated, just the movie and the last word and the text. It's a little mix. This is the 33 interpret of the letter in video, actresses. That's the crossword woman using all the words of the letter. This is, how do you say, somebody, a Secret Service specialist. She made a code from the letter. She encoded the letter. So, and she was to hide because she's Secret Service. She's a grammatical specialist. And something strange happened to me. It's not very visible because my slides are quite bad, but it's the first work where I lost the text because I asked women to speak for me. And so it's the first work where I suddenly wonder what I was doing. I mean, I got the idea, but I had lost what was my main interest generally in the work, which is the writing. And having lost the text, I did all the pictures and the video. And I think something strange happened to me because it's the first time I think I do really good picture. And I think this possibly, until now my pictures sometimes are not good, and I don't really care because as long as they help the story to go, they help the text, they are together. And so if a picture is not even taken by me, I don't care. If it's somebody can do it better, it's not a problem as long as the work speaks. In this case, I started to take pictures of those women as when they discovered the letter, and for the first time I really liked my picture because, and I think this comes from the fact that I knew I had to have a reason to be in the project. I had to do something, you know, and I did the picture for the first time when usually it's more the text that is always mine, and the picture can be anything found, done by someone else, medium quality, whatever. It's not important as long as the work functions. Here I had to do the picture. And strangely enough, I got last year a very beautiful prize for photography that normally I would have laughed, you know, when they gave me the Hasselblad prize. That was like the best prize I can exist in photography, and I got it. And normally I would have just not understand anything. And because I did Take Care of Yourself, I think I felt less guilty because I said, okay, maybe it's acceptable. That's the Venice pavilion. There is the SMS language, the letter translate into SMS, and that's a group's all the interpret actresses, singer, reading the letter. That was in the entrance of the pavilion. This is a story that's not really. I was invited in Paris to do a project in the city, and I don't really like to do this, but I decided to do it, and I had the idea to make a phone booth. It was for 3 years, to make a phone booth in Paris that I would be the only one to know the number. So the idea was to call from time to time that phone booth, and whoever answered, I would talk to. And after, I was afraid nobody answered or it's boring, so I thought it may as well be a nice phone booth that at least if nothing happens, Parisians are not too angry at me to have put, ugly phone booth. So I made a architecture jury, and I invited architects from all over to design a phone booth, 1 meter in Paris. And Frank Gehry, Jean Nouvel accepted this. And I made a jury, and Frank Gehry won. And Frank Gehry has been my angel since 1989. No, 1989. The Olympic Games, 1984. I went to Los Angeles. I was invited to do a project, and I decided to ask people in Los Angeles, where are the angels in Los Angeles? And I had 21 persons, politicians, the Mayor Bradley, Daryl Gates, chief of police, like that, people in the street, and artists like Ed Ruscha and Frank Gehry, somebody gave me his name. And I went to see him and asked him where the angels were. He answered, and the next day, and I told him what I was doing. I was at the beginning, it was 84, and I started in 1980. And the next day he called me saying, would you like me to become your impresario? Yes. And the next day, I got a phone call from a friend of mine in Los Angeles, a gallery, saying, would you like to have a show? Frank Gehry asked me to make you a show. Yes. And that's how really my work started in terms of success, because until then I was fighting, and this show changed my life, because America changed my life. I survived many years because of American collectors, definitively not French. So I'm very thankful to America. And Frank Gehry managed to have me that show organized, and that show changed a lot of things. It was a show that after traveled, even came here to Berkeley in the Matrix from part of it, and it's after traveling that it finally arrived in Paris, but after moving here. And and since that day, every time I have a single show, anywhere in the world, Frank Gehry sent me flowers. The flowers you saw in my mother's show in front of the grave were the flowers of Frank Gehry. And I've been keeping those flowers since 30 years now. They dry. I have boxes that occupy a whole wall of my house, boxes of every show and every dry flowers of Frank Gehry, which is taking more and more places. And so when he won the jury to do my phone booth, he made a flower. So that's Frank Gehry's phone booth. It doesn't work anymore. It was a disaster because not the phone booth, but the phone never worked. People would not answer. When they answer, it was deadly boring. So the only thing that really was good about it was Frank Gehry's phone booth. And at the time, Frank Gehry had not been successful at all in Paris, so I'm the first one that offered him a building. That's my mother down there. This is a project I made called 20 Years Later. 20 years earlier, I had asked a private detective to follow me. And there is a gallerist in Paris called Emmanuel Perrotin that wanted me to go into his gallery. And I didn't want, so he tried to find a way to seduce me. He realized that I had been followed by a detective on April 16, 1981. So on April 16, 2001, he decided to have me followed. And he had to tell me this because he learned I was going away for a trip. So in order for me to stay in Paris, he had to tell me, and I accepted the game. And so it was a very strange, nostalgic work, because I redid what I had been doing 20 years before, and time had passed, and it was quite sad actually as a work too. And that's the project. It's a detective story and my vision of my day. There is one of the detective at the San Francisco Museum right now. So it's not this one. No, it's the other one. It's the first one. Yeah. So that's the answer 20 years later. And a lot of story. I'm not telling you all project because, as I say, we would be too long. So this is already a selection. But in that, in being followed by that detective, I've been working lately for a few years with not much success, but many times I have works that, some of my work takes 16 years before I know what to do with it. So they stay in boxes. I have a few works like that wait for. And I have one now waiting. And it's about people that disappeared. I've been trying to work since a while on people that disappeared. How they are ghosts in the house. How do the family still feed them? Do they still have the clothes in the room since they are not dead? There is a woman that told me, I searched my son everywhere. I didn't find him in the living nor in the death. So he has that strange status, which is a little the no man's land, like my mother in a way, where he's not dead, he's not alive, he's just disappeared. So I've been working, interviewing many families of people who disappeared. And actually the day I was walking with a detective behind me, It's complicated to go backwards. Huh? Next time I go back in the right order because there is. I made a show in Beaubourg because there is a girl that. No, it's too long. I skipped. No, what I can tell is something amazing happened to me. I made that work about people that disappeared. That's why now it's stuck. I initiated it with a great French journalist called Florence Aubenas because I wanted that we work on the same subject to see how, as an artist and her as a journalist, we would deal with the same subject and what would be the difference between how we would face. So we chose the people that disappeared. And we worked for a year interviewing families of people that disappeared. And she's a journalist, she went to Iraq and she disappeared. She was taken hostage for 5 months and she disappeared. And she was found and brought back, so she's here now. But it was very strange because we looked for disappearance and we found it. And in a way we stopped the project there and now I'm starting it over without her. I mean, we are still French, but I've decided to do it alone. But I'm in the process now, I'm just starting. But this is a project that took 16 years to do. It's a project about failure. I was invited in a bank here in America, and I became friend with a private detective of the bank, and I managed to get all the video surveillance film of people cashing money. So it's very mysterious when you see them from close. Is that, there is only one, that many of them, there is so much sadness in their eyes. They are people alone facing their money. And it's like in a confessional, and there is a complete sadness in their look. And I was quite amazed by the image and seduced by their beauty. In the same time, they were too seductive, and I didn't know what to say on them. They were working by themselves. They were beautiful images. And then I start to wonder, but then what do I do? I found beautiful images, I show them, but what's my place there? And I kept refusing. They were too beautiful for me. So for 16 years, every year I tried something about it. You know, I asked Jean Baudrillard to write about them, but then again it was not me, it was him. Then I went to see bankers, speaking to them about money, but I didn't. But those images didn't need the banker speeches. Every time those images were proving me they didn't need anything else, and me I could not accept. So, and what made me so that maybe I was paralyzed by my style, because my style is photo and text, and maybe I was not able to accept beautiful images because I needed the text, and maybe I just didn't need it. Maybe it was in my head. It was just that sometimes you are so used that you are frozen in one style. It's photo and text, and it's hard to escape and do something else. And I just could not escape the text. So I kept looking for something to go with those images because I could not accept their simplicity and their beauty. And after 16 years of failure, I realized that the project was a failure. So I did a movie about all my attempts and how I could not accept them. And finally I gave up and I showed those images. So that was this wall of images. That was a show at the Pompidou Center, a retrospective I had a few years ago. So after making the movie, the work is composed of a movie that tells the 16 years of attempt, and at the end, this is acceptance of the mystery of the found image. Anybody wants to speak about anything I've said? The last, yeah?
I have a question about the translation, about your text. Do you do your own translation?
Yes, I don't do it. I mean, I ask 3 or 4 translators to do it, and then I work on all the translation. It takes me a lot of time. I can't translate alone, but I know what I don't want. I don't know what I want, but I know what I don't. So by adding different translation, I finally erase, 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 and find what I want. Yeah.
In the images in your Take Care of Yourself, did you determine how the person was going to present themselves, or did this person say, this is how I want to be?
Yes. First, I didn't erase anyone. Everybody I asked, I showed the answer, because for me it was not about one answer. It was about the addition and the obsession of them. It was not one answer I was interested. It was in the process of asking those women to answer for me, so I could not select, refuse. Then they chose the place generally where they wanted to be photographed. They asked to come in my house, or they asked me to go to their places, so they chose where to do it. So I took their portrait wherever they chose. After, I showed all the work, every single word they say in the book. I didn't edit anything in the book. But the work on the wall is very, very different. I allowed myself to pick in there. Since the book was giving everything they said, I allowed myself to make a work on the wall that was a work of art and not the complete, precise text as they gave it to me. So I worked a lot. Actually, it's a work that changed a lot in my work. I did something for that Venice Biennale. I didn't know. In France and in Belgium, the way to be elected at the Venice Biennale is different from all over. Everywhere, like here in America, the government somebody choose a curator, and the curator choose an artist. In France and Belgium, an artist is chosen, and this artist choose his curator. And I didn't know which curator to choose, because there are not that many curators in France that have been helpful with me. They were all in America. And so I didn't know who to elect in France, because I just could not figure out who I wanted to thank or to work with. There was nobody specific. So I decided to put an ad in papers. I put that ad in all the art paper, in America, in Italy, in Germany, everywhere, in France, in Libération, in Le Monde, saying Sophie Calle, French artist representing France at the Venice Biennale, is looking for somebody to curate her show. Please send a curriculum vitae and a motivation letter. 0 curator answered. Because they all were afraid I would use their letter, make fun of them. So no one answered. But no one was really brave enough. But I got 400 letters of people saying, I don't know anything about art, but I like butterflies, I'm sure it could be helpful for you. I like Venice, it would be so nice to go there, I'm sure. So I started to be really scared. And at that point, I decided to take my father as a curator, because he's a collector and I love him. And but he thought he was too old. He's 91, and that he wouldn't have. Venice is a place where you need help. It's a tough place, and he thought he would not be helpful enough for me to. And by miracle, I got an answer by a French artist called Daniel Buren, that said, I'm interested. And I chose him because it was miracle. And he was very helpful. And he changed my work, because he came in my house and he realized that the way I work was always by systems, like I have an idea and then I do a diptych and I repeat it, like for Exquisite Pen, a work that comes before, it's like a diptych, always the same question, answer, the same 2 photos. It's very, and he looked in the wall in my house and realized that I had postcards, taxidermy animal, a painting, a photo next to it, a table with objects. And he thought my house was much more free than my work. And he pushed me, saying, try this time to be as free as you. And so I think it changed the work of Take Care of Yourself, because instead of finding a system for the whole work, I work woman by woman. Except for the actresses, because it was a video. But for each of them, so there is, you know, some work are on wood, other on glass, other are very big, some are very small, some are with pages of paper, or many different material. I felt like if I was a student at school wanting to try everything, you know. And this is Daniel Buren. For me, it's a very different work from everything I've done because, first because of the picture and also because of how to apprehend each woman. So I gave myself the freedom to use their text the way I wanted, since I gave them in the book. I treated them the way they wanted in the book, you know, like not changing anything in their story. So, which allowed me to play with the text on the walls.
I had a question though about the photographs you have. So some of the women, you know, have obscured faces, you know, and they're not. You know,
some of the women wanted to be hidden, like the grammatical, for example, she doesn't like herself. She would. Some of the women didn't want. It happened like that. It was not a decision. It just happened. I just found out that the piece of paper was helping me a lot in the image. That it was always. I was following that letter, and actually most of them were reading the letter when I photographed them because they were discovering the letter. So that's why it's always that letter. Sometimes like that because they were just. The idea was to take them while discovering that letter. Yeah. No. Yes.
I have a quick question about when you went to the clairvoyant.
Yeah. The clairvoyant, yes.
Did she deliver you like a list of what she saw you as doing, or did you repeatedly call her as you got different?
Actually, the clairvoyant didn't want me to test her as a clairvoyant. She was ready. She's a very interesting woman, and she didn't want me. She didn't want me to prove that she made a mistake, because she don't work like that. So the first time I went to see her, I asked her where, when, and what. So she refused what. She said, okay, I can play with where and when, which makes that I was not trying to trap her, you know. So she first saw me, you know, next Tuesday in Berck. That was where and when. And after we repeated where and when, every time I was stuck somewhere, with her indications. So every time the where and when was answered, I had to move somewhere else. I called back saying where and when. Initially, it was not supposed to be short like that. The first time I went to see her, my plan was to give myself to her the same way I wanted to give myself to Paul Auster, so to make an ambitious trip, months, and just follow. But the first trip we made, she wanted to see if it would work, so it was Berck, and it was only 3 days. The second trip, my mother was dying, and I didn't want to go away more than 3 or 4 days. So, and the third trip, the card refused it completely. So the third book is called Nowhere, because the card kept refusing, so we made a work. And after she refused to go on, because the card didn't want me anymore.
How do you select the people that you work with?
Like what? Like
the clairvoyant or...
Clairvoyant, I went to see her one day because I was depressed. I don't believe in clairvoyance, but I believe that if you are depressed, somebody talks to you for 1 hour, saying nice things, you are going to feel better. So I just went to see her for that reason. And I was amazed by her vocabulary. She's a very, very intelligent person with an incredible, precise, splendid vocabulary. So I called her back saying, you know, I don't want to use you for free. I just want to become your friend. And she said, yeah, I was interested by you also, so let's see each other. So we start to see each other, and very quickly that idea came out. She was interested to play with me, to go in an artistic field. I was interested to use her skills. But the first time was just, depressed. And what's good, since I don't believe in clairvoyance, is that if she says something nice, I'm going to decide to believe it because I'm depressed. And if she says something not nice, I'm going to say I don't care, I don't trust it. So I win in all sense. So. something else about? No. So this is a very short project I did in Paris. It was, they initiated in 2000 the Nuit Blanche. I don't know if it came here. The idea was for the whole city for one night to have artistic things in the street, wherever. They invite artists. So one night, it doesn't stop from evening to the next day. And so I was invited for the first Nuit Blanche. I was their first guest. And Nuit Blanche means in French a night where you don't sleep. So I immediately, since I like paradox, I decided to sleep. And I wonder where to sleep, and I thought of the most impossible places being sure they would refuse, which was the top of the Eiffel Tower, where nobody ever slept, and that was never open in the night. And they said yes. So I found myself on the top of the Eiffel Tower, and the idea was that I asked people that would come to tell me a story for me not to fall asleep. Except it failed because 16,000 people showed up. So it became like a mess, but you know. And this sign says Sophie Calle, end of night in the Eiffel Tower, which was like completely surrealistic for me. And that's a portrait I made of myself on top of the Eiffel Tower with a story, saying, I asked for the moon and I got it. I slept. Every time I see the Eiffel Tower now, I feel it's a little my house. So it gave me a strange personal relation to the Eiffel Tower. So that's part of the autobiographical series that I've been doing through years. That I keep adding those series of photos. Some of them are here in the Fisher collection, the autobiography. So that's part of that collection. This is a work, Exquisite Pen, that I did. Actually, it's a work, I'm going to tell what was the work, but when I showed it once in a rotunda, I asked Frank Gehry to design the show. So this is the work that I'm going to tell you after, but in architecture designed inside the rotunda by Frank Gehry for that show. It was an incredible work that just lasted the time of the show. It was a disaster because it was he made a house that we had to destroy in a way. So that's Frank Gehry's things for the show. And that's the show more boring now in Pompidou Center. Same show. So the work is about. It's one of my three work about failure in love. One is the breakup letter, Take Care of Yourself. This one called Exquisite Pen, and the third one is something I made here, but it comes before. I was living with a man. I went for 3 months on a trip to India, and to Japan, finishing in India. And I received at the airport a little message that made me understand our love life was over. And I had been doing a trip of 3 months by myself, and I immediately thought that the trip was responsible, that if I had not gone so long, he would not have left me. So and when I had made a very exotic trip going to India, I crossed Russia on the Trans-Siberian train. All this trip, when I came back, everybody wanted to know how was India, China, Russia. And I hated that trip because I thought the trip was responsible for that breakup. So instead of telling people what I had done, touristically speaking, I told them, I don't care, this is what's happened to me. The man I love left me. And I thought that if I was telling my story over and over and over, by sheer repetition, I would end up by exhausting it. And so I thought that I should do that work as long as I would suffer. So I would go, I would be crying in the street or in a bar. People would say, what do you have? Well, the man I love left me. So the first time when I told the story, it was a very long story with tears, with hectic vocabulary. And after repeating it 60 times, it was very economical, like he did this, I did that, it was 4 o'clock. And I thought that the more if I would exhaust the pens, or by the repetition, or by comparing, by relativity, by comparing it to other. Because I asked in exchange to all the people I told my story, I asked them to tell me what was the most painful moment of their life since I was telling mine. So people told me stories, and I thought that if people tell me something awful, you know, the family burned and they lost their job, and me with my stupid breakup, I would feel ashamed. So I thought that one of those two elements would stop the story. Generally, in all those projects, I try to have a natural end. You know, in the disappeared people, she disappears. My mother, she dies. That's an end. When I followed on the blind piece, that's before, I asked born blind people to tell me what was their image of beauty. The days the man said, I hate beauty, I could never understand it, that was the end, naturally. I made a work about an address book, I will tell after if we get there. But it's too complicated to say. So anyhow, when I was a chambermaid, it was for a month because that was a deal with the hotel. So generally I try to have a natural end. So in this case, I thought that the natural end would be the end of an happiness. And it worked, actually, because for 3 months, so this is the countdown, the count up towards the end. I made broderies. We don't see it very well. No, we don't see well. Oh, he left. He's coming back because his work is arriving. Here you don't see well, but all the white, all the gray text, it's the same picture of where I received the bad news with a phone in India in a hotel room, and on the right, and it's my text. And the first texts are very long, and they are embroidered white on gray. And the more the work goes and becomes economical and short and cold, and the pen goes, it's embroidered gray on gray and very short, and you can hardly read it. So I also worked with the material on when the pen erased. And in front on the white broderies is the story of each person that told me. And I call this exquisite pen because it's a medical term that when you break your arm, for example, and you put your finger just where it hurts, it's called an exquisite pen. That's a medical term for it. And for me, what was amazing in this was the feeling I had that never in my life ever I had been suffering more than this day, in this place, at this hour. And the ability to say, this is the worst moment of my life, this is what made me want to make a work about it. So this is the taking distance, let's say, with the pen, and this is the contrary. This is a countdown. Since I thought the trip was responsible for that suffering, I took, since the day I left Paris until the day I received the message telling me it was over, it's one picture. So it's one picture in the train, the passport, the reservation of hotel, going from France to India, and each image is stamped 90 days before happiness, 89 days before happiness, 87 days, because you don't know when it's going to fall on you. You have that things like there, and suddenly it's going to be at the cross of those two streets. Why those two streets? And that day, you don't know, the worst minute of your life. And so I wanted to draw the way to that worst moment of my life, which actually now doesn't seem to be that bad as the worst moment. Hello. This is a work that started here in San Francisco. I received a letter saying I've been through a very bad period. Do you mind that I tell the story when you are here, or you don't mind? You don't mind. I've been through a difficult period in my life, and I would like to spend the rest of my mourning period in your bed. And I like the style of the letter. It was very well written. So I was attracted to say yes because I'm sensible to text, and this was very written in a way you wanted to say yes. In the same time, I didn't know who was the person, if he was somebody rich or poor, and to say yes, come, and he arrived in my house. I don't like him. My bed was already occupied by somebody. And I look at him, I don't like, and I say, no, finally you can go back to San Francisco. Would have been a little rude. So I didn't know how to say yes without saying yes. And I found the idea to send my bed to San Francisco. So bed, mattress, everything, you know, which lead me to something, it's not in the work, an amazing, hilarious exchange with the customs, saying, why don't you buy a bed in San Francisco? And then I got the letter between customs saying, you know, I don't know what she is. She says she's an artist, but why a bed? You know, I got all the mails. It was quite funny. So this is a bed in my house, leaving my house. And that's the bed in his new house in San Francisco. The man that received it sent me the same day a letter, like if it was absolutely natural and normal, that I sent my bed, saying, your bed has arrived, it's all fine. And he's an artist, George Green, here. And I told him that when he thought his mourning period would be over, I would like to get my bed back, so he should tell me for me to bring it back. And we had a few exchange, which are part of the on the wall here about this. And one day he said he was ready for me to get my bed back. So that's a different project because it's not. I mean, it's initiated by an idea God, but it's not initiated by me in the same time. So, don't like it? You don't like it? Yeah? No, but you look very... Huh?
It's your talk.
It's my talk. Yeah. So, this is a completely different project. I was invited to do a work in Berlin, and I've never been in Berlin ever. And I decided to work on the absence, sudden absence of the symbol, like sudden, you know, you have like, I don't know, no, we don't see it here. Maybe we pass Berlin. Anything you want to say about the things I just talked about before? Yes?
When you did those projects about these breakups, did you ever have those men contact you after the project went public?
Well, I did 3 projects about breakup. One I did with the man I broke up because we made that movie called No Sex Last Night here in San Francisco. So we did it together, so he didn't contact me. The 2 others are the Exquisite Pen. The man was terribly angry at me, terribly angry, but and nobody could recognize him, nobody knew. There was no name, it's just a man that left me in such a way. And I think he suffered from not being recognized, so he published an article with his name saying it was him. So, but saying how angry he was. And so everybody that didn't know who he was suddenly knew. So the Take Care of Yourself is a nicer story. The man learned I was doing something with his letter, so he called me. We were not talking to each other at all for that time. I proposed him to show him everything, to show him the work, to show him I proposed not to do it if he didn't want, and to show him everything. And actually, he said that no, he didn't want, that he would do whatever he has to do when the work would exist, but he didn't want to stop it because he hated the fact he was the subject, the victim in a way, but he respected the idea and the work. So he didn't want to stop an idea he liked, a project he liked artistically, even if personally he was not very happy with it. And and I think it was very hard for him when it came out. He saw it before anybody. But we've become extremely friends now, because I'm extremely thankful to him of his attitude that could not be more elegant. I could not imagine anybody doing something, because I had a lot of anxiety, because even if I do things, I sometimes have guilt or hesitate. And he said, I like the idea, go, and I'll deal with my problem. So what I didn't say, he had written before a book about me without asking me. So we were a little equal, So he's a writer. So and he had, not without asking me, but I didn't have my word to say. And the book, I read it when it was published. So in a way, it was also even in that kind of game. But he was, he's been very elegant. So those are the three. Anything else? So I pass Berlin. This is a work with Paul Auster that I kind of spoke a little about. It's a phone booth. He told me to take a public space in the city and to behave like if it was mine. And I decided to take a phone booth, and I put flowers and money, cookies, notebooks, everything. And it became a place where everybody would come. The phone was free since I put quarters all the time. And I put a tape recorder to listen to people's conversation, because you cannot change yourself. And this is an everyday story. This natural ending of that story was a natural ending because the police came and destroyed my phone booth. So the natural ending came this way. That's also related to Paul Auster. In his book Leviathan, it's really my life for 10 pages. Strictly, not my description, but except there is 2 ideas of him inside my 10 pages. His character Maria does everything I do, but she also follows 4 letters of the alphabet to live, 3 letters, B, C, W, and she eats following a chromatic diet, blue on Monday, red on Tuesday, etc. So since those 2 actions were inside my pages, I decided to do them. So I started to live under B, C, and W letter. Like here I am like BB, Brigitte Bardot. Except I took a photo of her that was exactly like that, except all the animals were alive on her photos. And me, I did it with dead animals. This is a chromatic diet menus, with a story of what's happened. So that was the obedience to Paul Auster. This is a project I did from 1980 to 1993 without knowing before 93 it would become a work of art. Sometimes I know what I do, sometimes I do it for myself, and things change during the time I do it. And at the time I was extremely, in 1980, weak about my birthday. I was always afraid people would not think about me, would forget me. And because I was that fragile, it was always a disaster. Obviously I was calling for disaster. And so I decided that every year for my birthday, I would invite as many people as I was old, plus a stranger, and I would never touch the gift I received. Because if somebody gives you something, you wear it, or you put it, if it's lipstick, then it's finished, you throw it in the garbage, and there goes the proof of love. And I wanted to keep those proof of love. So I kept them in boxes, and in 93 I decided to stop, because in the same way that I try to find a natural ending, it also has to be an ending that in this case, the idea came out of fragility and the real need to be protected that day by organizing a dinner, having people receiving gifts, being able at Christmas to open one of the boxes, remembering all the gifts I got. But in '93, I realized that I was not that fragile anymore and that I didn't care that much about my birthday. So suddenly, what was a real need out of a fragility became a trick that it was. So I thought it was time to stop because there was no reality and necessity behind it. So I stopped in '93. That was a natural ending. Was the end of fear in a way. So it's every year the gift I received for my birthday. I mean, it goes from olive oils here in the bottom for 2 photos that Cindy Sherman gave me, or so they are artist work that I reappropriate in a way by, this is 1985. Some ideas, years were less, when I was traveling, or this was at the Tate Gallery. Yeah. Anything about those 2 projects before the movie? No. So this is a movie I made here in California. I was in love with a man that didn't love me, as usual, and because it's what I like. And he wanted to make movies, and I wanted to marry him. We'd been living together. We arrived to a moment in our life in New York where we had totally stopped talking to each other. We could not even talk to each other. And I was invited here by Catherine Wagner, here, to teach at Mills College. And I don't like to teach, but at the time I was very interested in traveling any way possible. So it was an occasion to come here, to spend a semester, to have a house, to survive also. And we made a joint class together because it was a photo class and I didn't feel I could teach photography, so we made a partnership. And I thought this man that I loved, Greg Shepard, I thought that he was dreaming about making a movie. I had never thought about making a movie, never had the intention of making a movie, never wanted to do one. But I thought that if I proposed him to make a movie like a carrot, maybe he would come with me. And it worked. He said yes. I mean, it's one of the rare words he told me, yes, because we could not talk. And so we took his Cadillac cross-country from New York to Mills College. And for me, there was I could have taken an empty camera and not put any film out. I never thought. For me, it was just a way to trap him, to attract him, thinking, So when we arrived in Mills College, they proposed us to edit what we had been doing. And I thought, okay, there is nothing to edit. But if there is 3 months editing, even fake, it will stay 3 more months. So I never believed in the movie. After 10 minutes editing, I realized that there was maybe a movie. So for me, it's a very, very different world because it's the first time that I don't use my life to make a project out of it, but where it is a project that allows me to live what I wanted, which is to live with this man and marry him, because we did marry on the way. I married him because I was in love, as I say. He married me because he thought it would add a climax to the movie. And we married in a drive-up wedding window in Vegas. Because him, all the way, he knew he wanted to make a movie. So he was thinking in terms of making a movie. And me, I was thinking in terms of having him with me. So we had two very different, but those 2 different things made us stay and do it. And after 10 minutes, I realized, yes, there was something. So as I said, it's very strange because the motor was my life and not the work. It's a completely reverse of all the other where I've been working, because I made a movie without wanting it, without realizing I was doing one. And so it's a very special project, very painful, because we didn't speak to each other. He would whisper in his camera, and I would speak loud because he doesn't speak French. I would speak loud in French. So, but we never knew. I didn't know in the trip why he married me, for example. But we learned the thought of the other while editing, because we had to translate and understand. So it was 9 months here. I found a space at McDonald's, art space. I don't think she's here anymore. That offered 9 months of editing. She was also an angel for me here. And we made that movie called No Sex Last Night. The only moment where we could talk to each other was through the camera, because the camera was between us. So this is one of the moments where we have a conversation, because we film each other, which was the only moment we could have a relation. So, and this movie had a very amazing life, because, as I said, I never planned to do it. Then it became a movie. It went to Telluride Film Festival. And then it arrived in a movie theater in Paris, and it stayed 7 years. So, this is completely against my will, you know. I think I must be the only person in the world that made a movie without wanting it, you know, like, because it's so difficult to make a movie normally. And it was all made, the only expenses on the movie was a car repair. Because, you know, we made this with a video camera, we edited in Mills, and then with at McDonald's. It was all made, and nobody was involved. So the only expense on the movie was a garage. And and that was a Cadillac that he left somewhere in California. You know, I was very jealous of that Cadillac that he loved much more than me. You know, but I owe my wedding to a Cadillac. So anything about this before I go on? We have half an hour more for the most to go. So no, I go on. So this is a project I did again in America at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. At the time, I had been invited to make a show in Boston. And I fell in love with the Vermeer painting in the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. So every time I would have an interview by a journalist, I would say, okay, let's meet in front of the Vermeer. And so everybody knew, you know, that I was in love with that Vermeer, because it was my only meeting point. And I left Boston, and a few days later, the Vermeer was stolen. And somebody said in an article that I stole it. So, and Isabella Stewart Gardner had a very strange will, because she wrote in her will that she would give everything, all her collection, which was very impressive, to the city of Boston, under one condition, is that nothing ever be touched or changed. Which means that when they stole the Vermeer plus 9 other, 3 Rembrandt, Manet, I mean, it's the biggest, I think it was the main robbery in history. When they stole all this, they had to live in the museum, the empty spot. When it's a full museum, you don't have 1 millimeter, and you have 9 empty space, like a kind of mise en scène of the absence. Because you have the nails, you have a sign that says here is a Vermeer, because you cannot touch anything, and you have empty space that are very theatrical, like if it was so the absence, which is my main subject in a way, through death or people going away, or you know, here was like staged. So I photographed the absence, and I asked everybody having a very constant relation with the painting to describe it. So in a way, it's like the woman in the breakup letter, because the people that carry the paintings spoke of the weight, the ones that clean it spoke of how shiny it is, the ones that repair it spoke of the little destruction, the cleaning woman spoke, so everyone related in a different way and spoke to me about the paintings through his language or his relation to the work. So it's like a portrait robot of the absent painting through everybody's relation to it. So that's the Rembrandt. That's the same kind of work, except before, since we are going backwards. At the MoMA, I was invited by Robert Storr to do a project inside the collection of the MoMA, and I took, it's less dramatic because it was work of art that were on loan. But it's the same idea, except since they are on loan, I could not replace them by real objects, so I worked on the wall because they are going to come back. So it's a description of the Opera House, for example. People made me little drawings, so it's a collage made of on the wall itself, which was a very beautiful experience because I was alone every night inside the MoMA, doing this on the wall. Every time the public would go, they would leave me alone inside the room. So that's the Opera. And that's the same work in Paris with Bonnard. So every time it's like in the Rembrandt, or it's the exact size of the missing object and the little drawings they make. This is here, the grave, Olima, Bolinas, and many other graveyards. Since having started in Bolinas, I went in the Bay Area searching for more family graves. And this, speaking of the grave, something amazing happened to me 3 days ago. I came here in the Bay Area. Before, I was supposed to work here yesterday and today, and I have strong links to Bolinas because I arrived in Bolinas in 1978 and stayed a year, or 77 and stayed a year, and that's where I did the grave. And then when I came back at Mills College, I went back in Bolinas, so I kept links and friends in Bolinas. And in a way, those graves for me were always the one I could say, this is the beginning, those graves. So this graveyard of Bolinas became, in a way, the beginning of my professional life. Not, you cannot say what's the beginning, I have many beginnings, but that's definitively one. And I came here with a friend of mine from Paris because she's doing a documentary about me for French TV, and we decided that you should come with me since I was invited here because of you. I mean, thanks to you, since I was invited here, I thought I should take the advantage that I was coming here to go to Bolinas once more and show my grave to my friends, so for the movie, to show where it started. So we went with a little camera in the graveyard of Bolinas, and we met the guys that takes care of the graveyard of Bolinas now. And what I must say before is that my mother is buried in Montparnasse Cemetery, and my father and I, we bought our grave in the Montparnasse Cemetery years ago. And for years, every year, he's alive, my father. We are going to visit our grave every year to have a drink and get used to the neighborhood and the people around. So every year we go, a bottle of champagne, and we get used. And it was supposed to be for my father and I, and my father remarried. And he decided his new wife would come with us because there is room for 3. And me, I'm not a family girl. I mean, my father, I have a real relation to him, but I don't know why I would recreate a family with my stepmother that I hardly no, you know. So I thought, I mean, the same thing with my mother. She's, you know, there is spot for three, but I have a half brother that I don't like. So I don't see why I would spend the rest of my life and death with my stepmother or my half brother, when my mother, yes, it has a reason. My father, it has a reason. There is a real link, but not my stepmother. So I decided to leave my father's grave, which was quite a crisis in the house. But so I found myself with no grave. So I decided to build my own grave, since I'm absolutely obsessed with that. And I went to the graveyard of Montparnasse last year, and I asked somebody, a friend of mine, a theater director, if he would accept to do the, how do you say, the dress rehearsal of my funeral. Because since also I'm a control freak, I want to be sure I know everything about it and nothing is going to escape. So he accepted that we do the rehearsal, which meant I needed to have the grave. So I went to the graveyard, and they told me that there was a new rule now in France that you cannot bury, like my father did with me, your grave in advance. You have first to die. And I cannot wait. So, I mean, not to die, but... so I tried to explain to them that I wanted to use my grave and make a work out of it and invest it. But so far it's not been... positive. They still don't want me to have a grave now. So I arrived in Bolinas 2 days ago, and there was that guy that runs the graveyard of Bolinas, and we start to speak. He used to be a private detective. And yeah, it's true, huh? It's not a joke, you can verify. And now he runs the Bolinas graveyard, and he knows my work. So we start to speak. And he said, well, this is the nicest part of the graveyard because that's where the druid were, you know, so it's non-religious. And Ferlinghetti, and, you know, he gave me names of poets of Bolinas that all bought the spot because it's empty so far. There is only one. It's new, you know, he just organized it, but it's the oldest part of Bolinas. And he says, there is only one left. And I say, what do you do to get it? He say, well, you have to have a reason to be there. And I say, how do you have a reason? Well, you have to have a link with Bolinas. I say, you know, but I lived here and I made my first picture. He said, that's it. So we went directly to the office where I made a check. And he said that was the best, he told me it was the best deal in the Bay Area in terms of real estate. And it's not a joke, it's surrealistic, but it's true. So I made a check, and I got number 74, the last one, the last empty spot is mine. And I say, how do we do with the body? He said, well, if you want to come complete, you send by UPS, and if it's ashes, you do FedEx. So it seems that my story with California is just starting. So, and it's well, I just have a little negative point. Is that for me it's more logical to be in Paris. So if Montparnasse changes his mind, I will have trouble I have to think about something. But right now I'm a little disturbed because it's all new. It's since 2 days, you know, that I'm supposed to die here. And but so I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but you know, I've not already had the courage to announce it to my friends in Paris. Because since they all have to come for dress rehearsal, it makes things a little complex now to organize. So, anything about this? I'm going to, well, these are autobiographies. One of them is here, no? That's yours, huh? This is a real story too. When I was, how old was I? Because you have the text in front of you. That's a trick I'm doing. Well, when I was very young, my grandparents thought I had a nose too big. So they decided to take an appointment with a surgeon to have my nose redone. And I was quite hesitating at the time. I could not make my mind if I wanted to do this or no. And the surgeon committed suicide a few days before the operation. And that's why I still have my nose. So, it's on display somewhere?
Well, it was in our home.
Yeah?
We're moving, so it's
Yeah.
no longer there.
So those are different.
It was lonesome this recent.
Yeah? Ah. So it's traveling. Yeah. So those are some of the autobiography. This is a work I did. I'm going to go quicker now because I think we have to finish soon. So this is the work I did about the blind, the one I told you. I asked blind people to tell me what was the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. And this, the natural ending, was a guy that says he hates beauty because he cannot understand it. So that's how I ended. This is a trip I made in the Trans-Siberian going when the exquisite pen man left me, so that I did the work 16 years later. What was interesting for me in exquisite pen, it took me 16 years to show the work, and because I kept it, I didn't know how to use it. And I realized that it was like a parachute, saved me against the anxiety of not having any more ideas. Because every time I would not have ideas, I would say, oh, I have exquisite pen. So for years, I had that protection against the fear and the lack of ideas. And I think that's why it took me 16 years to finally face the project and make it. Because I had realized how comfortable it was to have an idea that you keep on the side in case you have no more ideas. So that's that's the Trans-Siberian trip I did with a man that knew 10 words in French. He knew how to say communiste, fasciste, marché, Mitterrand, Torres, humanité, de Gaulle. And we had to live together in a very small cabin of train. And what was interesting is how you organize daily life with somebody you don't know, who you don't talk to. But you have to organize life very quickly. So who decides when we eat, when we sleep, you know? So it was quite interesting, this kind of forced life in couple, with somebody you have never seen before. And so this is what the text is about. And I took 600 pictures of him in the night. I would wake him up in a flash. He was always smiling. He loved it. He was that, you know, he was always ready. He was a Presidente Kolkhoz Vladivostok, and we cried a lot when the train arrived in Vladivostok. That's the work I did in the newspaper Libération about an address book I found in the street, and I investigated about its owner. In a way, it's the same work than the stolen painting or Berlin, because it's a portrait robot of, in this case, it's somebody. But it's a portrait robot of somebody or something you don't know through everybody linked to that person. I went to see all the people that were named in his address book, and they spoke about him. So the plumber would say his house is like that, the best friend would say this, etc. I mean, I'm doing it very short. That's the hotel room that's... Huh? Okay. So, well, this is the most polemic. You know, if I have enemies in this room, it's time to show yourself. Because this is the most invasive project I've ever made. And I think that this one I felt the only one I felt bad about. I found that address book. I went to see all the people. The man didn't know, but all his friends say, oh, he's going to love it so much that I started to dream about him. When he found out, and he was for 3 months in Alaska, so he never knew what I was doing. So I would call his friend saying, you know, I found the address book of this man, can you see me? And then they would talk to me or refuse to talk about him. And when he came back, he was extremely angry, and he decided to take me to court. Then he found another answer. He found a photo of me without clothes, nude, that I had done because I was a stripper before, So there were photos of me nude, and he published it in the newspaper saying, she invaded my life, this is my answer, I'm showing her also nude. Which was very good for me, because what's happened in those projects is that many times it's about reality or fiction. Some people don't like it because they think it's not true. Some people don't like it because it's true and they would like to have... There is always a problem about is it true or no. And when I did the Libération, there was a lot, it was in the daily paper, published daily in Libération. So there was a lot of public. And it became a big fight in the newspaper. Why, as an artist, was I allowed to invade somebody's private life when the journalist of that kind of paper, which is not a trashy paper but a serious one, would not allow themselves to invade somebody's life. So there was a big discussion in the newspaper as what can you do as an artist compared to a journalist. And many of the journalists were very angry that I do something like that intrusive, but others said, but no, you should not be angry, it's fictitious. So there was all that discussion about, is it true or no? And when he answered, he put his name also, that I had never given, and he gave the reality to that project, so people that didn't like it start to like it, the ones that liked it. So there was a real mess, and I understood the problem about is it true or no, how it entered the work. But that's another discussion. But so that was a daily, and it ended, speaking of ending, when I met his best friend. So suddenly I had all information about him, and there was no reason to keep going and call somebody that maybe had met him 5 years ago and didn't remember him. So the meeting of the closest person was what gave me the end of the... And I had 3 days in advance on the publication, so I had to work very quickly because it was, I had 3-4 days in advance, so, and it was published daily in the paper. And I found myself for the first time with enemies I didn't know, because many people didn't like it, and I got tons of letters of people that were really annoyed. And myself, I felt some guilt when he reacted so bad, because I was sure he would love it. I was sure we would fall in each other's arms and it would be the beginning of a beautiful story. And it was not what's happened. He always refused to meet me, he never want. He said he would never want. And I had to, I wonder what I had done wrong, did I say too much? But I must admit that I liked the project, and I was so excited that if I had to redo it, I would redo it. So my guilt is not that strong either. That's work that you can see right now in SF MoMA, which is one of your work. Huh? No? You didn't loan it to the MoMA? I think you did. Yeah, that's yours. Not that one. No, an hotel. Yeah, no, because there is one now. Yeah, it's. I was a chambermaid in Venice, and I try to study myself when I sleep in a room. I always wonder who slept in the bed before me, in the same bed. Who was it? Maybe I should have met him or her. And so I decide to try to make the portrait of those rooms through people that occupy them. So that's one room. And it was a description of the object I found and the photos of all the objects. So it was like, it was like that. This is a private detective work, the one that's now at MoMA. So you can go and see it there. This is my first work. Not my first work, but my first work. I realized I was an artist. I go backwards before. I did 2 works That's my first work ever. That's the beginning of the slideshow normally. I came back to Paris. I was lost. I didn't know what to do with my life. My father had told me that the day I would know what to do, he would help me. I did the Bolina's grave. I arrived in Paris. My father gave me a roof and food, but I didn't know what to do. And I started to follow people in the street. I think it came because, not knowing what to do, I thought that I would use people's decision and motor to follow them and discover my city through their paths. So was not clear why, but since I didn't have the energy to go out of my house to do anything, I thought, okay, I'm going to follow people and see where they go. So I started to follow people, and I took pleasure in this. And I started to take photos, and finally one day I followed a man. I lost track of him, and a few hours later I saw him again, and I thought it was a sign. I should follow him. And I went everywhere he was going. I would listen, and I heard he was going to Venice. So one day I stopped seeing him in the street because I had found out where he lived, everything. And so I guessed he was in Venice. I went to Venice. And again, for me, it was not artistic. It was, I don't know what it was. It was not clear. It was maybe because I wanted to seduce my father. And my father had on his wall work of art that were photo and text. So maybe it's how it came. It's very unclear for me. And so I went to Venice and I followed that man, but didn't make anything out of it. And immediately I was accused of invasion in private life. So so I showed that work years later, but as a confessional. So people listen my confession about following somebody, and I'm confessing intrusion in a way. So this is the first work I did when I came back in Paris, but it was like that in a little book, photos pinned in a book. And while I was printing those photos, since I was supposed to print photos to please my father, I shared a dark room with another woman. And one day she had been printing all night. She came in my room. She asked if she could sleep in my bed. She went in my bed. She spoke about it was warm, things like that. And I said it would be funny to have a bed busy 8 hours on 24 hours on 24. And I had that idea to ask people to come and sleep in my bed by shift of 8 hours. And again, I didn't know where it was going. What I knew is that I was supposed to print photo for my father to believe I wanted to become a photographer. And so any occasion, any idea, and I started to print those photos. One of the women I invited to sleep in my bed was the wife of an art critic. I picked her in the market down the street. She came back home. She told him she had been sleeping in my bed. The art critic came to see me. He said, would you like to show at the Biennale of Young Artists in the Modern Art Museum? And that's how I became an artist. He decided for me. And so that's my first show in the Modern Art Museum under the decision of a critic and not my own. And somebody saw that show and invited me to show in New York with a group of artists. And we were 10 guests, and there were 9 spots in Soho and 1 in the South Bronx. And I was not even an artist yet, so I got the South Bronx, obviously. So I arrived in the South Bronx, and the only work I have ever made were the sleepers. And I thought it was a little obscene in the South Bronx to show a work where people sleep to play, when there people had no place to sleep. And there was a kind of cruelty, to play with this idea in a place as tough and difficult. So I asked if I could have 1 week to do a project there. It was a place called Fashion Moda. It was a new beginning of the era of graffiti. And they said, yes, you have 1 week. So this project, that's the sleeping, is the first project I did as an artwork. Conscious, I was an artist, invited for an art show, and doing it as an artwork, when the 2 precedent work were not made in that consciousness, at least. And I decided to play with a place that was a ghetto, and where normally when you are there you have little chance to get out, and also with the fear that he was giving to all the Americans I knew, like the danger of it. So I went there by myself once a day for 8 days, and I said to the first person I met, take me wherever you want. So it was a way to play with the fear. And I said, but take me to a place that if one day you could leave the South Bronx, you would remember. So each one took me to a place, to the land that the Pope blessed. The guy that there took me to Citibank because his dream in his life was to have a bank account that he never had. A girl that was raped took me to the street that she used to escape when she had problem with boy, and a Yankee Stadium. It was like, a man that just came out of 7 years of jail, is the one before the end, took me to what his house was before he was in jail, and that there was nothing left. He was just been out of jail, he had not seen the place, and nothing was left. And since it was all in a rush in this Fashion Moda place, in the evening I push pin my photo, 8 photos, quickly made, push pin them on the wall, and somebody entered Fashion Moda in the night and covered floors, ceilings, everything with graffiti, which gave a much better quality to my work, because suddenly it became, more strong. So this, in a way, also what I could consider as my first real work, because it's a work that I knew the first time what I was doing and what for and where and why. Any question? Oh.
You mentioned your father had images and text on the wall, and that was one of the reasons you started. You're like, oh, this is what.
I think it helped, yeah.
Okay, what were those, and what?
He had photos of Dwan Michaels, for example. A lot of pop art. My father was not rich, and he collected he had a good eye. He bought a Twombly for $500. He bought Liechtenstein and work like that when they were beginning. So he had a lot of works like of pop art, and
So the text was like a text in the copper.
Yeah, I think it's Dwan Michaels maybe that most. I think I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and when I saw, I think, this kind of work, I thought I could try to imitate it. It was maybe reachable as an imitation, but I could not paint, but maybe take a picture, write a text. I see it was something I could face. But it's a mixture, but yeah, a lot of conceptual art. He had Kossuth, he had Lawrence Wiener, so this kind of works.
I guess, are you interested in the authority of the text, or like the structure that the text gives you? Was that something?
I'm more interested by the structures that the ritual give me. The idea, the ritual, the obedience to an idea. How the obsession comes from something that's not obsessive at all, but you decide to follow that man and becomes obsessional, and to learn that he's going to have food at 12 and 10 and not 1 o'clock becomes like an information. Just by it can be a completely arbitrary subject, and just by obeying its rules, it becomes a necessity. So this kind of structure, the text was natural for me to use, maybe because I thought my picture was not good enough, or just because I've always wanted to write. Yeah?
Now that you have a more permanent residence in the Bay Area.
Very permanent. Not for. I still have two choices. I have two. I have not. I have signed for the ownership, but I still keep an eye on Montparnasse.
Will you come back then often, perhaps?
Yes, I would like to come back. I have a real link to Bolinas, for example, real link. Now I'm working more than I used to. I'm less lazy, so I need reason to move. I don't just, like when I was 20, decide that I'm going to live 6 months in Bolinas. I'm more installed in a way. So I need reason. You have what?
I have an opportunity maybe. You will come back.
To invite me?
Yes.
How do you know I will like your invitation? No, but it's true that I need. It's true that I need a reason. Maybe to do a movie about my grave in Molinas is a reason. It's a work. Maybe to have a show. I would love to show actually my mother's show in San Francisco. I've been looking for spaces in Los Angeles, and now I'm going to look for a space in New York and in New Orleans for that show for my mother. So this is what I call a reason. What I don't do anymore is just hitchhike, travel, and so. But yes, I would like to come back because well, there is something in that graveyard now that attracts me that I have to face in a more serious way. So yes, I would like to come back, but I need a little. So maybe it's you. Yeah.
I find it interesting that your first two art shows were not really intended to be art shows, they just happened. And then also that your first two films weren't really intended as films, the one being No Sex Last Night and then the other being your mother. So and then I hear you say maybe you'll make a film about the graveyard. So now
I don't know if I'll make a film about the graveyard, but I have to do something. Obviously, I'm too attracted on that kind of subject, and it's too close from me for just going back tomorrow and forgetting. So I have to do something. I don't know what, and I don't.
are you drawn to film?
If I am drawn to film,
Yeah, given that
no,
you've done the two films.
no, I don't like film. No. No, it was a necessity. Every time I made a film, the necessity. My mother, if I wanted to tape everything, film was I could have put a recorder also, but if she wanted to smile to me, film was a necessity to be there. It was not. I didn't decide to make a movie about her, but it was the only way to be there, except a tape surveillance camera, but that was also film. But I'm not a natural. It's too heavy film for me. I like to control everything. Film. I need to be I need a technician to edit. I don't control it. I just made a little film last week in one day. I got a phone call. Not last week, last month. I got a phone call by a band in America called REM. Why is it funny? Yeah, and they asked me to do the clip for their record that came out last week. And I said no, because I say I don't do clip. I don't do clip. And then the guy Michael Stipe insisted, saying you can even do it with your iPhone. I said oh. And then he sent me the piece of music that I really like called Walk It Back. And I just spent the day in my house watching all my iPhone movies, and I put 3 together, and in the evening I sent it to him, and that was it. And it's a clip. It's you can look at it on the internet now. It just came out like 3 days ago. I got in this case it works. And now I'm going to meet them in New York because my first clip. So, what? There was one last question I heard, and it's always interesting what is going to be the last question. So, yeah, it's you, the last one? Yeah?
Can you tell us what how do you
It better be a good last one, huh? Huh?
how you garner all your ideas from? And can you describe what your day-to-day life is as an artist? How do you write a journal?
It's a serious question? You want to know what I do in the day? Huh?
So how do you
Well, today I woke up in a very bad mood. Then I lost my credit card. Then I lost my phone, so I was 1 hour with the bank. Then I went to meet a man I didn't know that proposed me an apartment in San Francisco. That was nice again. I mean, I'm teasing, but I cannot tell you what my day like. My day is as boring as everybody's day. I have to deal with daily life, market, food. I mean,
No, I was
I-
interested in figuring out how you write in a journal. Do you have?
no, I stopped writing a diary when I started to be an artist. Like the text had to be elsewhere, and I don't leave what I do as a diary. For me, it's not a diary. I want to make work of art. I don't want to reveal my daily life. This is why I was joking, answering you. But for me, it's not about me. It's about the attempt to fill the page of a book or the wall of a museum or things like that. It's not. I don't think anybody knows me, even after everything I said here. Nobody knows me. When we did No Sex last night, it's an example I often use with Greg. It was 1 year of our life. It was 60 hours of tapes, and we made a movie of 1 hour and 15 minutes. We could have done 10 movies, all saying the opposite and all being the reality. But just by the choice of certain words, certain phrase, certain moment, you fabricate a fiction. So it is a fiction, what I'm telling you, even if it all happened, because I need things to happen to be able to tell them, because I don't have enough imagination to invent. I can invent ideas, but I cannot invent what's happened. So I need the reality to follow it. But even if it happened, it's a complete fiction, just because it's a choice of certain moments, certain phrase, certain words, because it's an attempt to write a text with style, to choose an image that has some mystery, so things like that. So it's the same. I don't, most of my life I never speak about. I don't speak of my friends. I don't speak about the men I'm with, except 2 out of many more. About what I do in the day, I don't speak about this. It's boring. I'm not following people all the time. I have very few ideas. They take me a lot of time. I spend hours and days on one text of 5 lines, because I want to try to write in a certain way. So it's not a diary. I hope I am an artist and not somebody exposing your life like what you see a lot of those days. That was the last question.